This podcast is intended for mature audiences. Some listeners may find the content distressing, as episodes may include discussions of violence, human trafficking, and other forms of abuse, including emotional, psychological, sexual, financial, and physical. In many cases, names have been changed to protect those involved. Please note that the statements and opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect my own. Hi, warriors. Welcome to Beyond the Statistics, formerly 1 in 3. I'm your host, Ingrid. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Deana and Lizzie, two women whose stories sound like they're straight out of a movie. At different points in their lives, they were each married to the same narcissistic abuser. Through their healing journeys, they have joined forces to create the Surviving Toxic Relationships podcast, where they help others recognize and recover from toxic relationships. Today, they're here to share their story with us. Trust me, this is one you don't want to miss. Hi, Deana. Hi, Lizzie. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
We're so happy to be here, Ingrid. Thank you.
I am really excited to have a conversation with you guys. Before we get into just our chat, do you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself so that listeners can get to know you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Deana, and the person that we'll be talking about, which is our ex, I was married to for 27 years. I had 4 children with him, left the marriage, and now I have a wonderful husband, amazing, we've been together for 13 years and 4 more kids from his side. And then we have 13 grandchildren.
You're like the Brady Bunch then.
100%.
Times more.
Right. A lot more.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I'm Lizzie. I have been a school teacher. I am still single. And I have 4 kids as well and a grandson. And yeah, we're excited to be here.
Okay, so Deana mentioned a mutual husband. I know that is something that I definitely have not had on the podcast before.
Well, and when you said a short summary about yourself, we're like, okay, that's not a short summary. So we probably were like, do you want to know that now? Yeah, I was married to our shared ex 6 years after Deana had divorced him, but I didn't know they were divorced within days of our marriage. He told me 2 years that he had been single. So
days.
Yeah, days. And then we were married for 6 years, moved around. And then, yeah, that's where our story started, was at the end of my marriage with our shared ex. And lots of red flags, lots of stuff was happening. Our marriage was getting really weird. I was locked out of a bunch of stuff, like our Verizon account and Marriott account and all other types of stuff. And then he was saying that he was off praying and having counseling with other people. And I was like, this is not acceptable. He wouldn't let me meet anybody. So I left because I'd already been married once. So when I was sensing something wasn't right, my sister came to town and she helped me move out. And then in the process, I found out, and I didn't find out ultimately until when I realized I was going to divorce him, because I realized there was some cheating going on. But in between that time, that's when Deana and I connected because of our oldest son. And he asked if it was okay if Deana reached out to me. And I said, absolutely. What do I have to lose at this point? And Deana reached out to me within minutes, and we started texting a little bit. We scheduled a conversation on the phone. I think we were on the phone. No, I don't think. We were on the phone for hours. We talked nonstop. Deana filled in a lot of the gaps of what she went through and the turmoil and the heartache that she had experienced with him. And at that point, I was still at that, I'm going to file more of a separation and not a divorce, because I thought our marriage was decent. I thought our marriage was good. So at that point, I filed for divorce after she told me all that, because I was like, this makes sense. And then actually 4 days after my divorce, I went into my house, the house that we shared, because I left a lot of stuff behind, went to get my stuff, and I found some letters and cards on the floor. that looked like my handwriting with his name on it. And I picked them up thinking, which ones are these? You know, deja vu. I was there alone. And then I noticed they were from another woman. And with that, she looked just like me and Deana, because if a lot of people say we look alike in so many ways, but she looked like me. She looked like Deana. It looked like a mixture of both of us. And there was something creepy about that because while we were still together, she put dates on those cards. So it filled in the dates that she put on those cards was like dates that I was like, oh, that's when he said he was doing this, that, or the other, and so on and so on. So then Deana and I went on a mission to find this other person because we both sensed, and I don't mean to just take over here, Deana. We both sensed that she was a really good person. Deana's daughter did find her Facebook page, but it was hard to like communicate through Facebook. There's a lot more here, but I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version. And then what happened was I ended up leaving that town because this person that he was seeing, we call her Jane, lived just a little town over. So I lived in a bigger town and then she lived in the smaller town next to us. So we never ran into each other. You know, it was easy. And then after I left, Deana reached out through Facebook Messenger and left her information and said, I could tell you're a really good person. Lizzie and I wanted to, you know, just reach out and see if you were still dating Rex. And I feel like, Deana, this is your portion because this was a good portion of your story.
Well, so this is what happened, Ingrid, which it's crazy. So here he is. He's married to Lizzie. He's living a double life with this other woman for almost a year. And Lizzie finds those cards and letters with the dates. And then, you know, she and I are like, oh my gosh, he's going to marry this woman immediately because he's already been with her now for going on a year, you know, making a family with her probably. So we leave that message on her Facebook Messenger, but we're not friends. So obviously she's not going to find it for a while. 6 weeks later, sure enough, she finally calls. And we didn't see, when we looked at her Facebook, we didn't see any pictures of him. So we didn't even know if she just, you know, couple dates or, you know, I mean, we could tell from the cards they'd been together for like 9 months, but like, you know, how together? We didn't know. So anyway, so she finally calls and she says, is this Deana? And I said, yes. She said, okay, I have this really confusing message from you. I don't understand it. Can you please explain it to me? And I said, well, listen, Jane, Lizzie and I just want you to know that we know that you were dating Rex and we know that you're a good person. We could tell by your Facebook and by all the people who love you on your Facebook. And we just want you to know that we're positive that you did not know he was married when you were with him. And she's like, and I said, are you still with him? And she said, yes. And she said, what are you talking about? And who's Lizzie?
Oh my gosh.
And so I realized that Lizzie had just been cut out of the history so that it looked like he was single for 6 years. And so
he went from you to her is what she thinks.
So he did. Yeah. So he went, you know, he was still married to Lizzie. So he was married to Lizzie for that, you know, and then for almost a year, just having another family with her, and then telling Lizzie that he was going on retreats for the weekend because he wanted to, you know, get in touch with God. And he wanted to, you know, become a better husband and be more spiritual. And he's giving her all these song and dances. And then he's telling Jane, you know, that he can't, you know, he's doing like weightlifting and working out at the gym, and things like that. But the first thing that poor Jane said to me after she starts to panic was, where does Lizzie live? And so I told her, and she said, you mean that little house where the old man and lady, where he's taking care of them, the house he lives in, that he's taking care of them?
You have got to be kidding me.
She's like, are you telling me that was him and his wife's home? And I was like,
oh my God,
Jane, there is no little old man and old lady. Like, and so then she gets even more panicky and she's like, do you mean this red coat that I'm wearing is Lizzie's? It's not a gift from this lady? And I was like,
no,
there was no lady, and it's probably Lizzie's. Yes. And so now she's in this full-fledged panic. She can't believe it. Her son had gone off on a motorcycle trip with Rex, and they were out of state. And now she's thinking that her son is off with this man that she doesn't even know. and he could be crazy. So she's like freaking out completely. And I had to talk her down that, you know, Rex is, yes, he's crazy. And yes, he's very manipulative and very psychopath, but he's not a murderer or anything. Like, he's not going to harm your son. Calm her down there. And then, you know, she and Lizzie ended up connecting soon after. And so they started connecting all the dots. Like, you know, they had gone on this big, wonderful motorcycle trip together for the whole summer. And, you know, the gifts, the souvenirs that Lizzie had bought, somehow Jane was given those as a gift from Rex. And the pictures that were taken with both of them, Lizzie was somehow cut out. And then he was, you know, told her he was going on this trip by himself to just find himself and be a better person. And they just started connecting dots all over the place. You know, so Lizzie thought that he was going to retreats and all these different things, or being with friends, and that he was driving Uber in the evenings. And then, you know, Jane thought he was going to the gym, and that he couldn't bring her to the inside of his house because he didn't want to disturb the little elderly couple, although he would drive her by or run in to grab something. So the dot connection was absolutely crazy. And this little sassy Jane, redhead little Southern lady, she cut everybody's hair in this town. She knew everybody. And by the time Rex pulled in a couple of days later from his trip with her son, she had a police escort come and escort him from the driveway all the way to the house. She had papers served to him by the police. She had an annulment. She had a court date. And she was completely done. And he hops off of his motorcycle completely dumbfounded, and she's got the screen door closed. She didn't want to come outside. And he yells into the house, "I didn't even get a chance to tell my side of the story," which Lizzie and I crack up at today, because we're like,
what could that even be?
Yeah, exactly. Like, he was the master of disguise for sure. But this one,
I kind of would have wanted to hear it just to see like how crazy this story could be.
Exactly. I would have enjoyed that too. So this is where we're at. This is why Lizzie grabbed my ear basically and said, we're going to tell our story. This is what we're going to do, because there are people out there like this that manipulate and lie and deceive, and they go ruin not just one family, multiple families, or multiple people, women, you know, men. It's on both sides. So, you know, we both were working full-time careers. I let my career go a while ago, and Lizzie's about to let hers go. And this is just what we do now, you know, full-time, and because it matters. Because it matters.
Oh, it does. So, okay. So they did get married. He and Jane did get married.
Oh, the interesting part about that is, Deana always laughs at me because I know dates. On June 1st, I believe Deana sent the message on Facebook Messenger, and we found out on July 15th. I could be off a few days, but just to kind of give you the broad, like she said, 6 weeks. Jane married Rex on June 2nd, the day after Deana sent the message. So if she had seen the message right away, she would have never married him.
Oh my goodness. Facebook. Come on. You need to make it
this was years ago. So obviously it wasn't like, you know, this June and July. This happened years ago.
And I would like to have a disclaimer. Deana and I are not professional Facebook stalkers. we were just women desperate to see if, you know, because everybody said you need to tell her, or you would hear, oh, she's not going to believe you anyway. But in both Deana and I were in mutual feeling that we needed to let her know whether she wanted to believe us or not. That was up to her, but we felt like she had to know. Like, it was like, especially me, I think I was just driven to get her to know what happened.
And you know what, Ingrid, I had never told Lizzie about him. Like, I knew that Rex was marrying Lizzie. I didn't know Lizzie at that time, of course, but my kids were like, Mom, you need to tell her. You went through 27 years of hell. You need to tell her. And I just thought, she's not going to believe me. She's going to think I'm the crazy ex. Like, it's just going to cause weirdness between all of us. And of course, Rex will be furious, you know, and then if my kids go visit their dad, it's going to be weird. And I thought it all through, and I didn't. So I still carried that. Man, I feel bad. I wished I would have, you know, because Lizzie was such a good person, and she didn't deserve that 6 years of bankruptcy and all the things that they went through. And so then, of course, now we have this new person that we can save, you know.
Yeah.
So we were just so passionate to save her.
So did you guys know each other before you started date? Well, you guys were still married. Deana, you and Rex were still married when Lizzie was dating him because you didn't know
No,
they were
we
married.
actually, well, okay, so we were I mean, he moved out. Like he moved
Oh,
out.
okay.
It was just
Okay.
a matter of, in California, divorces take like 6 months. So it was just a matter of the divorce going through. He had already left. So we weren't, I mean, technically we were married when they were
Mm-hmm.
dating, but he was out in his own place and everything. But of course he told Lizzie that he and I had been divorced for 2 years
Mm-hmm.
and spun that lie. So
Yeah.
And he was
So
so good that he was a good charmer for sure.
mhm.
was there anyone before you, Deana?
There was nobody that he was married to because I was only 17, but he did have an affair with a woman right when he got out of high school who was, he made a friend in another town after high school, a guy friend he played basketball with who was probably in his 20s. And of course, Rex was only, 18 when he graduated high school. And so this guy was married with a child and he started having an affair with this guy's wife, as an 18-year-old. And before that, when he would take school field trips, because he was a big, basketball star and all that, he would take school field trips. And when he got a hotel room, he would actually rent a prostitute on his school field trips. That's
What?
how deep this goes.
Whoa.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So, goodness. This is just craziness. But the thing is, it's not so crazy. The only part that's crazy is that the two of you actually have like joined forces because this story is really, it's not unique. I think that, it happens quite a lot. And I know that my abuser had previously been married. And I know that after our relationship ended, I was very concerned about the person that he ended up dating. And I felt this sense of responsibility for her, but we had mutual overlaps in friends. And so I know that she knew about me and she knew my story and she still she still did not believe it. They, I don't believe, are together now. They were, and I think that relationship has ended. But there is this degree of responsibility that you feel for the next woman, right?
I actually really love that you're bringing that up because we don't talk about that enough. And I feel like this is obviously Deana's, like, because that was her in this position. But I just realized I don't think we ever talk about that. I know Deana and I have had conversations. What do you do? Do you tell him? Do you not? But I'll let Deana continue. Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry at all. No. So yeah, agreed. Like, if I were to go back again, I would have told her. Even if she would have said, you're crazy, get out of my life. And even if Rex was like, how dare you? And and did his big roaring thing, at least it would plant a little seed there somewhere, so that when she started seeing the signs that were obviously going to show up, then it would give her some sort of a, baseline for what she was seeing and feeling. But, if that person has none of that and nobody's saying anything, then whatever they tell you that's all you've got. That's all you've got to go on.
Yeah, and it's gosh, it's easy to believe the person you're with, the relationship that you're in, because of course he was telling her all sorts of stories. I was crazy. We're all crazy, right? We're the crazy exes, and they did nothing wrong. And it just whatever they may admit to. Well, yeah, I might have said that or I might have done that, but it's because she did this first. She kind of backed me into this corner. I really didn't have a choice, or she ignored me, or whatever excuses there are.
Exactly. So in other words, she's more crazy and I was just reacting. What could
Yeah.
I do? Yeah, maybe I did that, but this is why. I mean, what would anybody do in that circumstance?
Mm-hmm. Even me knowing what I know about my abuser, and we were together for a long period of time, I still to this day, if his ex-wife, if she messaged me or if she wanted to talk, I would be like, oh, I don't know if you're crazy or not. But the thing is, like, I know that she more than likely went through the same thing I did.
Yeah.
I think it gets worse every time. Like the next relationship, I think it is worse. But I think she probably did go through something very similar, and she's probably not crazy, but he painted such a very strong picture of how nuts she was.
Oh, and they're so convincing. They're so good at it. I mean, really, truly, it's amazing. And if there's nobody to counter that, that's all you've got. And then, of course, now you love them. And generally, it's the beginning of the relationship when you're finding out about their ex and you're already infatuated and you already think they're amazing. And so, you don't want to believe it. So there you go. That's the perfect combination. That's the only truth you have. And you would never want to believe something about somebody that you feel is amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's talk about what you guys are doing, because you have joined forces. You do have a podcast. What is your podcast? What's the purpose? What are you guys trying to get out there?
So our podcast is Surviving Toxic Relationships, and we also have a YouTube channel, and we have a public Facebook. We're on a few social media, but for the most part, we're on LinkedIn as well. But for the most part, we stick with, the bigger ones. And we have written 2 books. They're not published yet. They're going to be out soon. But we've taken the time to write a book for moms that are trying to help their kids, their daughters especially, see signs, for toxic relationships early. Manipulation, gaslighting, what do those things look like? And there's little exercises for the moms to do with their daughters. And, that is hopefully going to help the next generation, and this is not just for your daughter that's looking at, boyfriend relationships. It's also for people in her life that are an authority, or even her best friends, that might be manipulative and gaslighting. Because, when our kids have been inside these relationships, or even if they haven't, they just don't have the tools to know how to deal with them. And if they have grown up in a toxic environment, then this feels normal and comfortable.
Right.
Right. And our second book is for the woman that's in the relationship now. And then it just basically is chapter, gaslighting, trauma bonding, financial abuse, betrayal trauma. It just has just chapter by chapter of all the things, 18 chapters. And, it's going to have affirmations and different things for the woman. There's even prayers in there for her to pray. It's more of a faith-based slant to it. So just to kind of help, her identify, oh, that's what this is. And that's what it feels like. And in both books, we put in our own personal experiences with each topic so that people can kind of identify with here's a little story about what this looked like. So,
and in the end,
will be helpful. Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, and in the end, the goal is that each person will learn to have discernment in any type of relationship. Yes, they're mostly focused on the intimate partner, but it can go with anybody. Yeah.
Oh, it really can. I had a very good friend that she was my friend during this relationship. And when I ended the relationship, we talked every day. And then I realized the reason they didn't like each other is because they were actually exactly the same. And she got mad at me one time and said, I'm not talking to you anymore. And I said, I am taking advantage of this opportunity. And the friendship ended at that moment. So what are some of the things, without giving away all the details of your book, but what are some of the things, if people are in a relationship, that they could be looking for that are clues that this is actually not a healthy relationship?
I think one of the things we focused on, and I know this is an easy one, is the charm versus character. We are so swept in by a charm of a person. Rex was very charming. My first husband, maybe not so much, but Rex definitely was very charming with me. And I always told Deana it was probably because he went through so much counseling while he was married to you and you broke him in a bit. I don't know. And he learned the trade better. But it's learning the difference between character and charm. Character is what you are behind the closed doors and outside. A charmer will be so charming outside, and then you may have a whole different human being inside the doors. So if you have that means that you're looking at a charmer, not necessarily someone that has good character. Just one of those patterns to look for.
Yeah, and the charmer, I saw a meme or there was something of where somebody on the outside that they're being charmed by this individual, colleague, friend, whatever it is, that I don't know what you're talking about. They were always nice to me. They were never cruel to me. But of course they weren't, because you weren't their victim. And that's the difference. They act one way with their victim versus the rest of the world, which makes you feel like you're the crazy one and you're the one that needs to change, right?
Exactly. You nailed it. That's exactly it. And when everybody, my ex, I mean, from his neighbors to his friends to anybody, I mean, his neighbor, they lived right next door and they knew him since he was a little boy, and they just thought the world of him. He was a gentleman. He'd open the door for them. He'd mow their lawn. It's like, you're right. You feel like you're crazy because all these people say, what are you talking about? Like, they're a wonderful guy. I've known them for years. But they, his mother knew of the things that he had done because she was his mother. And, he got caught in high school and even arrested in high school. So she knew of those things, but she still told me that I was just insecure and jealous, and that's why I had problems with the things I was finding out. So it's like, you have all these voices. And to your point about asking like some of the signs, I think really the biggest sign that people don't know what to do with in these relationships, or even before you commit to a relationship, is something just feels off, and it doesn't necessarily mean it feels off because, they're not at home when they say they will, or they seem to be lying. It could also just feel like you don't feel entirely comfortable being yourself in this relationship. You start to shrink. You start to get smaller. You don't want to confront. You don't want to mention something. You don't want to have an opinion, even if it's a good opinion. You start to change your own self and your own internal dialogue to appease them. And that right there is huge. That's a huge sign. Feeling, you walk in the door and you just feel a little anxious instead of excited. I remember when my husband would get home, the garage door would close from him driving in, and our kids would just go to their rooms. All of them. They would get up and go straight to their rooms. Those kinds of things, like, just, you're not free to be your happy, excited, passionate self at all times. You start changing. And that's one of the biggest signs, I think, that we don't quite know what to do with that, because we start to believe that we're the problem. So we're trying to be better, right? We're trying to change. We're trying to be more pleasing to this person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I remember there was like one day I looked in the mirror and it's like I didn't even know who I was anymore. I lost whatever identity I had going into the relationship was completely gone, and I was lost.
Oh, that's usually a sign later on in the relationship.
Oh yeah, that's like you should have left before that part.
Yeah. But you're right. But you literally lose your way because you keep giving in. You're shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, or compromise to make them happy, to keep the peace. To sometimes you get to the point where you're just like, I just need the kids to actually have a decent home. So whatever it takes, to where, my kids can feel happy. So I'll be the yin to the yang. But you're right. And that's one thing, Ingrid, that Lizzie and I want to do. We want to start groups for women where they can meet, virtually once a week, come together and talk about these things, because once you lose yourself, it's really sometimes hard to find it and to get it back, and some women don't even know they've lost themselves. They honestly just feel like all these conflicting emotions, and they've become a person that they didn't used to be, like you said, looking in the mirror, but they don't even realize that's how slow and calculated this has been. They don't even realize how they got there or that they are there. They're just thinking that they were doing the thing that any loving person would do.
Right. Because they're so twisty and confusing about it.
Well, and then you find yourself isolated, which is another red flag. And a lot of times when you're first in the relationship, it's more like they seem like they're trying to protect you. But then over time, you are now on your own little island with them. And by that point, you're so vested and you've lost connection with so many people that it also is part of the reason why you lose your identity as well, because the connections that you have are no longer there. They're void. And that's a really hard, painful thing. So I would say that when a person has been through abuse, the hardest, you have the exit, and then you have the healing portion, which is the biggest part of it. But then what people don't really spend a lot of time in, well, of course, you could do it in all seasons of life, is the reinvention, because yes, you have lost yourself. But a lot of times the reinvention can happen during the healing, it seems like, but a lot of times it's after the healing, because if you ended up through all this trauma while your kids were little, you're in that survival mode, and there's no time to thrive at that point. So you're surviving, you think you're going through the process of healing, and then it's like as the kids get older, you're like, oh wow, who am I?
Right.
It's a whole different phase. Whereas when I got divorced, my first husband, when my kids were all wee little, so I was going to school full time. I was working. I had 4 kids, and it was just me because, he got kicked completely out, and we had to get him out of the picture. And then I was like that for 10 years. But my second marriage, when I divorced, it was just me, and my kids were all adults. So that whole loss was so different than my first marriage divorce. First marriage didn't seem as bad because it was so traumatic that I could finally breathe, but I was in survival. But second one, when you don't have anybody there, you don't know yourself anymore. Yeah, it's different.
Well, one thing I wanted to say too about isolation is it doesn't necessarily look like blatant isolation. It's not like I'm going to pick you up and I'm going to take you to this remote place and I'm never going to let you talk to anybody again. Mine used to do things like if I had plans, hey, I'm going to go watch a movie with my girlfriends tonight, or I'm going to go out for a drink with my girlfriends tomorrow night, whatever it is. Yeah, do that. You need to have a girls' night. You need to have a girls' night. And right before I'm about to go out the door, like, oh, I'm going to miss you so much. I really wish that we could just stay in tonight. And it sounded romantic. And then I was like, okay, the girls will understand. I'll hang out inside. And then just that repetitive kind of thing over and over again. And finally, girlfriends stop making plans with you because they know you're going to bail.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Love bombing. Yeah, love bombing can be used as a weapon too. It's like you wouldn't think that kind, validating gestures of you mean so much to me and our time is so important could actually be abuse. Isn't that crazy?
Right. Well, that's why they get to keep you in for so long, is because of that love bombing, because you can see how good it can be. And yeah, sure, it can get bad, but look how good it was. And then again, he's so nice to everybody else. What do I need to change about myself to get us back to that really good time?
Exactly. And that's where you start to feel crazy, because you see the good in them. You see, the wonderful times. It's not every single day that you're miserable and unhappy. It is a pattern though. It's a pattern. And that's where you really start to realize that this is not a good situation, because you see patterns. But if it was every single day, we'd leave in a month or two. But unfortunately, It's a whole, push and pull. I feel you pulling away. I feel you starting to doubt our relationship. So I'm going to love bomb you and pull you back in. I'm going to isolate you by telling you how we haven't had any time together, sweetheart. Yeah, it's incredible that, that this happens the way it does, but it also paints a picture of why we're so confused and why there's such a cognitive dissonance. Your mind says one thing and your gut says another, and they're always fighting with each other.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a question. How long before you started realizing it was not a healthy marriage and you needed to get out before you got out? And then I'm going to ask a question that I hate the most, which is, why didn't you leave?
Okay, fair enough. I noticed there were red flags even before we got married, because I found out that he had the affair with the married woman, and but I was 17 years old when I married him, so I didn't even know what to do with that. So there were definitely red flags all over the place before I married him. Even the fact that one time we were having a hose fight, and we were washing the car, and I flicked him with the hose, and he got mad, and I was like, "What have I done?" But within 2 years, I saw that there was an actual pattern of him not being home like he should have been home. Things were weird. Something was off. And I found all of these back then in the 80s. There were 900 phone calls on your phone bill. And they were basically explicit phone calls. And I found this huge bill of all these 900 phone calls on our phone bill. And I was dumbfounded. And he told me that the neighbor kid came in every day for 3 months and did this. I'm like, okay. And so I packed up and we had a baby at that point. I took the baby and I left. So at that point, I knew that there was something way wrong. But, it's a nuanced answer to say, why didn't I leave? Because I left him 9 times in that 27 years. And it's easy to look from the outside and be like, okay, you have the problem. And I did. I was codependent. I was completely confused. I was completely dumbfounded and didn't understand what this was. But, every time that, that I would leave, I'd pack up the kids and I would move. I would be like, I'm drawing a line in the sand that this sexual indiscretion that you keep doing cannot happen anymore. And then I would catch him and then he would fall apart. He would be crying and begging, and doing these huge gestures, like, running 3 miles in the rain to me with a wet, soggy love note in his pocket, and going to therapy and going to the pastor, and, and then I would have the pastor calling me, and I'd have my sister calling me, and I would have other people calling me saying, look, this guy adores you. He's devastated. What more do you want him to do to prove that he's sorry and that that he doesn't want to be this person? And so now I've got this situation where by now we have a couple of kids, and I'm thinking that he's the victim of whatever this is, and that he doesn't want to be this person, and he now needs me to help him not be this person, right? So you add that into the fact that you love this person and you have children with them. And by the way, if you left, you'd be too stinking broke because he had so much financial crap that he was hiding and lying about and doing, that we were always poor. And when you put that all in there, it's like, and people are on the outside are telling you, he's a good guy. He's just caught up in some whatever, he can get help and you can be happy again. And then on top of all that, I had a strong faith in God. And I truly believed that God, not only helped people to get better, but also was very pro-marriage, pro-family. Why wouldn't he answer my prayers? And that was very much confirmed by the church that I went to and by the pastor that I was, counseling with. So you throw all that together and it kind of helps you understand the crazy pie that's happening. But at some point, the patterns keep going and you just, you start hearing the voices that are telling you something different and you start to slowly wake up. And so that's kind of how it happened for me.
Did you have like one specific thing that you said, that's the last straw, I'm out? Or was it, like you said, kind of a slow awakening?
It was both. During the 27 years, there were multiple sexual indiscretions that were happening. And of course, each one pulled me further away from him and my affection for him and my trust, obviously, of him. But there definitely was one final straw. And that was, he had actually been, from what I thought, clean, no sexual indiscretions, because his was like seedy adult shops and things like that. And, but it hadn't been an actual person, except for there was one occasion where there was a person, but it was just a fling kind of thing. But he'd been, he'd gone through this intensive sexual addiction recovery program that he lived there for 6 months. And when he came back, I just had all this renewed hope. He apologized to me, like for reals, like it seemed like he really understood what he had done and meant it. And so we were happy, and the kids started moving out. They were older. They started all moving out, and it was just he and I. And so I didn't have that added stress of him being mean to our children and just, them just like, ugh, it was just him and I. And so we were driving off after this honeymoon trip we had, and all of a sudden his phone rings. And of course I answer it because he's driving, and there's a woman's voice on the phone, and she's like, and it's a blocked number. And I could tell she was outside. So I knew it wasn't a sales call. And she was like, who is this? And I said, no, you called this phone. Who is this? She's like, no, I asked you first. Who is this? And, that knowing, by then you get this knowing feeling, right? In your gut, like you feel kind of nauseous and kind of gross, and you just know. And I was like, and she hung up. And then I just looked at him. And of course, he's like look, whatever that was, I have been clean and doing great for this number of, 2 or 3 years. I did not do anything. And that was the awful part when you didn't have proof, but you felt it and you kind of knew it in your heart, but you didn't have proof. So the next morning when he went off to work, I went and just started doing all the like phone hacking and everything I could do, and I just had to, because I couldn't live this way anymore in the in between for sometimes a year where you don't find anything, but something happened. And sure enough, I found this email account that I didn't even know he had. And in that email account, he had been seeking out prostitutes on Craigslist for just sexual favors. And I hope I can say this on your podcast, because if not...
Oh, yeah. There's been a lot on this podcast. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then you don't have to delete it. But yeah, so he would go on a trip with my dad, and my dad and him would go on these fun trips, like, to all these sports events and all these, fun things. Well, what he would do is he would secure the hotel room and get to the hotel early before my dad got there. And that gave him time to call people on Craigslist and have sexual encounters while he had the hotel. And I looked at these and I was like dumbfounded. Like, I mean, of all the things, and so then when I confronted him on it, his little trick was, I'm going to confess everything to her because that makes her feel like I am on the path to healing. So in that tearful confession to try to get me to, take him back, he said, that he had actually been having an affair with a woman at work. And, it's funny, like I feel like you just get to this point where you're so done that there are no emotions anymore. Like, you're not angry and screaming at him. You're not bawling in the car. I did some crying, but it wasn't like I'm going to miss him or I'm sad or I don't have a family anymore. It was like, that sucks for me, to be here. But I was so resolute. He could have done anything and it would not have mattered. Like, at this point, I knew that this thing was over. And that's what I needed. I'm such a perfectionist. I'm so afraid of failure. I needed that resolute in my brain that this was never going to change. And at that moment, that's when I was done.
Yeah. And you have that disconnect. I remember at one point mine asked me, "Do you hate me?" And I looked at him and I thought about it before I answered. And I honestly said, "I nothing you." Like, there was just nothing left.
Yes, you're right. You just get to that point and like, it doesn't matter what they do. They can't push those buttons in any capacity. Manipulation, control. They can't make you love them. They can't make you feel sorry for them. They can't make you hate them. It's just gone.
And I liked how my therapist put it after my first husband. And that was, they killed it. And now we need to give it a Christian burial. So it's like,
oh, I like that.
That's so true. It's just, let's dig a hole and let's put it in there.
So what about you, Lizzie? Did you have, it was a much shorter time frame that you were married.
Yeah. There was one moment a year or two before I left, because with a second marriage, because I went through so much trauma in my first, I don't care. Like, you put me through crap, I'm out. You have a whole different mindset. You're just more protective because first of all, what it's like to live on your own. So you're like, I can do it. I did it before, I'll do it again. It doesn't take away the grief, the pain, the heartache, but it does give you a sense of peace. But there was one time right before his oldest daughter's wedding that we were getting ready to leave. So he went to go get the car rental because we were going to rent a car for this drive to the wedding. And then what happened was, he left his phone. So I picked up the phone and it was so weird because I see texts from other women. And in the past, what I've done was I've been able to have access to his phone. He would give me his information, blah, blah, blah. But I was able to read all these texts from like 3 different women. And I was he walked in and he saw my face and he said, right? And I said, yeah, we're done. I was like, at that point, I was done. Here we were getting ready to go to his daughter's wedding. And he like followed me around the house. I said, just leave me alone. I just was so shocked that that could even happen. And I really was at that point, I'm not going to stay. I've been through too much in my first marriage. I don't need to go through this again. Then all of a sudden, I stayed. But then when the second time things were getting weird, I left. And I think that's why when Dina was telling me everything at that point, it was like, yeah, I'm not going through this again. I've been through so much heartache the first time around. I was hurting. I was disgusted. I still dealt with all those emotions, but it was so easier to chop it off. It was so much easier the second time than it was the first time. Unfortunately, I know I had a lot of shame and embarrassment because I thought, how did I get here again? Right? That was the hardest thing.
And he would also threaten suicide in both of our relationships. That one made it really, really hard when it was like
suicide manipulation. Yeah,
I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself right now. I mean, we went through that trauma too, and that makes it even more crazy.
Well, I think at that point, when they know that you're leaving or you're on your way out, they pull out all the stops, whatever they can do, whatever they can say to try to keep you where you are.
I agree, definitely. And that's where we always warn women, and, especially women. I mean, men get these kinds of abuse too, but we especially warn women, like, you need to have a quiet exit strategy because you just don't know how crazy this person can become once they realize they've lost control. And so, especially if this person is a gun owner and things like that, or even if they're not, it's really best to start planning, quietly putting away money. Don't tell anybody unless you know for a fact you can trust them, and just make this quiet plan.
Well, I think that's part of the problem too, is because you think that you can trust all of these people. You have all these people in your circle, and then all of a sudden you realize that they are not your friend. They're not on your side. And that makes it difficult too, to narrow it down to who can you trust. You can't even trust yourself anymore by the time you get to that point.
That's so true, Ingrid. And honestly, after my 27-year relationship, I looked around at my circle and I had so many narcissistic people in my circle as friends that I didn't even realize, until I got out of that relationship, kind of got the fog, out of my head and started looking at things differently because, I was like, when do they ever even ask me if I'm okay or call me or check on me? It's always them. I'm always serving everybody and pleasing everybody and doing for everybody. And there's no give and take in these relationships. And so I had to cut people out of my life left and right because I was done. I wanted people in my life that actually truly did care about me.
Well, and that's what's hard too, is you go into this relationship and you develop a family around you, a family of actual family and friends. And then when you leave the relationship, you're not just losing that one person. You are losing so many other people that were such huge parts of your life.
Well, I think there's like layers of grief that you have to go through and allow yourself to go through, and things will bubble up. Or then in the process, like Deana said, as you cut out of that relationship, the intimate partner, then you start realizing as you're going, like Deana said, the healing, then that's when you start cutting and grieving over that and grieving over that. So yeah, there's definitely layers there.
Well, yeah, you lose a whole family. You lose a whole family because, you have in-laws, they have in-laws, you've all been family, the holidays, and then your kids obviously are part of a family, and now your kids have lost their sense of family. I mean, as a mom, it's devastating to think about your kids not having, the traditional family anymore, and possibly even blaming you or being angry at you, for leaving, or them getting custody, It's like all the things go through your head, and it makes it such a difficult decision when you have children, especially.
Well, and then the healing, and that part isn't easy either. And I never want to say that with the intention of telling people just stay where you are, because the healing part sucks. And it does. You're going to have parts of the healing that suck, and you're going to cry for a variety of reasons. You're going to doubt yourself. And there are so many things that make it difficult. But once you get to the other side, this is one thing. It's just such a beautiful view from over here, isn't it?
It is so true. And I think of the grieving. One of my therapists said, you're in a cocoon right now. And I think that's how we have to view the healing process. And when you're in a cocoon, you're not around a lot of people. You are kind of like getting to know yourself all over again, and you need to be reflective. You need to be willing to walk through the pain, because that's part of the grieving process, because some people just kind of put it under the rug and they think they've dealt with it, but then it comes up later on. But I think if we can really make the healing process a more personal, beautiful thing of, it's okay to be a little isolated for a season, to have that time of just, I don't want to say lick your wounds, because that's not really the case. It's really, but it is healing and it is reinventing. And then you get to the point, like you said, it's beautiful. It's like the butterfly coming out, their wings are out and they're a whole different person. And then they start reinventing the areas and the flowers they want to go to.
That's right. Okay. So is there anything else that you think that are important parts of either when you're in the relationship or just beginning the relationship, in the throes of it, how to get out, how to heal? Is there anything that you think that we haven't touched on that you wanted to mention?
As far as how to get out and how to heal, I mean, the very first step for anybody out there that's feeling something might be off, something might be wrong. Maybe it's not a narcissistic thing. Maybe it's not actually toxic, but there's just something wrong. The first thing is really paying attention to that voice in you and finding out what it is. Do the research, look at patterns, pick up books, pick up anything that can help you to start seeing things clearly. Listen to podcasts, YouTube channels, whatever. Just get your hands on something and really start looking at patterns and start looking at how you feel when you're with this person. Every day won't feel the same. Some days they're going to be really kind and loving and warm. But if they can rip that security right out from under you without a thought, that's also something to pay attention to. That's the first step is the awareness. After that, once you're aware that there's something wrong, now it turns to the point of, can this be fixed? Can this be remedied? What is it? And can it be resolved? And definitely, please have somebody in your life that's a therapist or a really sharp life coach that can keep you accountable to what you're actually seeing and feeling, because it's so confusing. There's so much fog. And at that point, then you can make a decision on whether this is a relationship that is going to stay the way it is, or there's actually hope for that person to get better and change.
I think one of the things I like to talk about, and I love it when Deana says it or shares about it, but our name, our LLC is the Matadoras. And so you think of the Matadora, she goes into the ring with just her Maleta and the wisdom and the knowledge that she has when she faces her bull. But who do we have on the outside around in that ring? You've got family, you've got support groups that could be there for you. You've got therapists, you've got so many people that are there. But unfortunately, a lot of times when you're in the middle of that fight, in that moment, in that house, and you're facing that person, you feel so alone. So yes, like Deana said, educate yourself, get all the knowledge you can. So when you're facing that bull, you know what you're facing. And remember one thing, you are not alone. You are not crazy. And you are deeply loved.
Yeah, that's perfect. I do want to say one thing about Deana, when you mentioned therapy, I love therapy. I think everyone should go to therapy regardless if you're in a healthy relationship or not healthy relationship. But if you are in this unhealthy relationship and you are looking for some clarification, I would highly suggest to not go to therapy with that abusive partner, because they will take that opportunity to reinforce everything that they're doing and still make you look like the bad guy. And unless you have a fabulous, very well in-tuned therapist, they're not going to pick up on it. And they're going to actually end up validating the abuser.
I'm so glad you said that, Ingrid, because I tell you, Lizzie and I see that and hear people tell their stories about that constantly. They will bedazzle, they will, gaslight and manipulate and put your therapist in a fog to where they really now aren't sure who's on the wrong side of the fence. And you're right. And then, of course, now you've got this voice that you are supposed to trust that's telling you this person's okay. That happened definitely in my relationship all the time. People that I looked up to and trusted that were respected authorities in my life, we would go for couples counseling. Then they would tell me that he was just, a little boy that had a bad life and was just acting it out as an adult. And there was so much hope for him and he wanted to be better. And I could help him, as his wife and support him.
And they're love him.
You just
more.
need to love him more. Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
More. Yeah.
Yep.
What are you doing that you can help change him? Yeah. No.
Yep, exactly. So that's fantastic advice, Ingrid. Thank you for saying that.
Okay. So you mentioned 2 books. When do they come out? Do you know?
We're not sure yet. We're still at that crossroads of, are we going to self-publish, which that means they would be out in a couple of months, or are we have a publisher that is potentially interested in publishing our books, but it's a hybrid publishing. So that costs quite a bit of money. And, we don't do this for money. So we don't have money rolling in that we can just go pay, 10 grand. So, it's going to depend on which way that goes, but I expect in the next few months, you'll be hearing about something, and we'll definitely have it. It'll be on Amazon, it'll be ready to go. Both books will be on Amazon and ready to go, and be all like pristine, perfect.
Okay. And you already mentioned your podcast and some links and stuff, but could you say that one more time if anybody wants to follow along with you guys?
We are Surviving Toxic Relationships with the Matadoras. But if you just type in Surviving Toxic Relationships, you should find us because it's just a picture of us. We are our little logo. So there you go. Yeah.
And there were, YouTube, public Facebook, and our podcasts are on all the platforms. So we're pretty easy to find.
Okay, perfect. Now, I know you guys have already said really important things, but is there anything else that a lasting word of wisdom or encouragement that you want to leave with listeners?
I think one thing I would say, just any healing, or if you've been a victim of anything, there's a normal time of going through the as a victim, and then you go through the anger phase, but really find what you can do to thrive. Don't stay there. Don't stay angry. It's, that you've healed if you're not angry, and if you don't walk around like you're still the victim 3 years later. And I think that you'll find that if you find numbness about that, that's probably a good thing. It means you're on a good place.
Yeah. And I think last thing I would say is always trust yourself, always trust your gut. You may not know what it's telling you. You may not know what it means. You may not understand. And it's easy for someone to talk you out of it. But if that feeling in your body or in your nervous system, or even these thoughts that keep coming in your brain, if they keep recurring, pay attention to them. It would just be like a physical symptom. Okay. If you kept having this pain in your abdomen and you could kind of, put hot packs on it and rest and get it to go away, but then it kept recurring, you're going to finally realize that something's wrong. Please pay attention to that, because that is most of the time your best and earliest sign that something is off. And you can save yourself a lot of really wasted and painful years by addressing that thing, that feeling that something's wrong, or you're feeling in pain, or you're feeling confused. Anything you're feeling that isn't complete happiness and joy to be with this person, you've got to get that checked out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Deana. Thank you so much, Lizzie, for coming on. Thank you for your podcast. I love that you guys have joined forces and are tackling this topic. It's so incredibly important for people to hear, and I'm so appreciative of your time.
Thank you, Ingrid. It was such a delight. We enjoyed ourselves.
Thank you again, Deana and Lizzie, for joining me today, and thank you, warriors, for listening. You can find the links Deana and Lizzie were referring to in the show notes. I will be back next week with another episode for you. Until then, stay strong, and wherever you are in your journey, always remember, you are not alone. To learn more, explore episode resources, browse the collections, or register as a guest, visit beyondthestatisticspodcast.com. If today's episode meant something to you, please share it with someone who may need it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and follow Beyond the Statistics on social media. Beyond the Statistics is a .5 Pinoy production. Music written and performed by Tim Crow.